Case 1. Skyler Nie. On the evening of July 5, 2012, 16-year-old Skyler Nie quietly slipped out of her bedroom window in Star City, West Virginia. Her parents, thinking she was asleep, never suspected she was walking into a trap set by the two girls she trusted most, her best friends. The next morning, when Skyler's parents realized she was missing, panic quickly set in. At first, they feared a typical runaway situation. There were no signs of a break-in, no struggle. But as hours turned into days and days into weeks, the theory that Skyler had run away began to unravel. Her bank account remained untouched, her social media accounts were silent, and she hadn't taken her phone charger or extra clothes. She was gone without a trace. Skyler's parents, Mary and Dave Nie, didn't give up. They worked tirelessly with police, printed flyers, made public appeals, but for months there was no sign of Skyler until an unexpected confession flipped the case upside down. Skyler's best friends, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Shea, had been inseparable with her since middle school. But as they entered high school, things began to change. Sheila was the bold, charismatic one, Rachel was quieter but eager to please, and Skyler was smart, witty, and increasingly uncomfortable with the changes in her friends. Then came the betrayal. In January 2013, 6 months after Skyler's disappearance, Rachel Shea walked into a police station and confessed. She and Sheila had lured Skyler out that night under the pretense of just hanging out. But instead of driving around, they took her to a remote wooded area near the Pennsylvania border. There, as Skyler began to walk away, the girls attacked her with kitchen knives, stabbing her more than 50 times. Skyler fought back, screamed, and ran, but she didn't stand a chance. After the brutal attack, they sat by, watching as she bled out. When it was over, they dragged her body into the brush, covered it with dirt, and left her there. Rachel's chilling explanation? We didn't like her anymore. That was their motive. Apathy. No jealousy, no anger, just indifference. A month later, Skyler's body was found buried in a shallow grave. Her parents, who had held on to hope for so long, were devastated by the truth, which was far more horrific than they had ever imagined. Sheila, who had pretended to grieve, was arrested in May 2013. Her social media posts, which had shown fake sorrow, became a grotesque act of deception, while she knew exactly what had happened. In court, neither girl showed remorse. Rachel pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sheila was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Both were teenagers, and their cruelty shocked the nation. Skyler's case became a landmark in legal history. It led to the passing of Skyler's Law in West Virginia, which mandates immediate public notification when the child goes missing, even if the case doesn't meet the criteria for an Amber Alert. The case also shattered the myth of teenage innocence. Skyler's diary revealed how she had sensed the betrayal coming, with one heart-wrenching entry reading, "You're doing all this expletive to me, and I'm not doing anything to you. You're a two-faced blank, and I'm done." She knew something was wrong, but never could have imagined the extent of her friend's betrayal. Today, Skyler's parents honor her memory, not for how she died, but for who she was. A kind-hearted young woman who trusted the wrong people. Sheila and Rachel's names are forever tied to the crime, but it's the void they left in the lives of everyone who loved Skyler that lingers the most. Case 2. Lisa Burke. In the peaceful village of Karisel, Denmark, the idea of violence or radical extremism seemed like something from distant headlines, not something that could unfold in a quiet middle-class home. But on October 8, 2014, that illusion was shattered with the brutal murder of Tina Romer Holdegard by her own 15-year-old daughter, Lisa Burke. Lisa appeared to be a typical Danish teenager, blonde, bright-eyed, and raised in a stable middle-class home. However, beneath the surface, Lisa was struggling. Her parents had divorced and she frequently clashed with her mother.
Over time, Lisa withdrew from both her family and school, a typical case of teenage rebellion that spiraled into something darker. It started online. Lisa became obsessed with violent Islamist propaganda, especially ISIS execution videos. She watched them repeatedly, often dozens of times in a row, and began glorifying the acts depicted. As she delved deeper into the content, she started chatting with radicalized individuals, one of whom was Bakhtiar Muhammad Abdullah, an older Iraqi immigrant with extremist views. The two developed a relationship, and Lisa, seeking purpose and power, became more deeply immersed in Bakhtiar's ideology. Lisa fantasized about joining ISIS and running away with Bakhtiar to Syria, but her mother, Tina, grew concerned. She noticed Lisa's erratic behavior, her obsession with violent videos, and her relationship with Bakhtiar. Tina attempted to intervene, setting boundaries, but Lisa resisted. She wanted her mother gone. On the night of October 8th, Lisa and Bakhtiar put their plan into action. They waited until Lisa's twin sister left the house, and then while Tina slept, they crept into her room with a kitchen knife. The attack was brutal. Tina was stabbed at least 20 times, and the violence was so extreme that investigators initially suspected multiple attackers. Lisa delivered the first blows, but Bakhtiar joined in, ensuring Tina's death. Afterward, Lisa called the police, claiming to have found her mother covered in blood. However, her story did not add up. Her voice lacked emotion, and she appeared oddly detached. When police arrived, they found Lisa sitting on her bed watching an ISIS beheading video. A review of her computer confirmed her fixation on extremist content, including videos titled ISIS Execution and Jihadist Beheadings. Text revealed that she had long planned her mother's murder and her escape with Bakhtiar. In court, Lisa showed little remorse. She smirked on her testimony and offered vague, deflective answers. Some described her as cold, others as brainwashed. But the brutality of her crime and the ideology behind it left them in shock. Lisa was sentenced to 9 years in prison, spending the first year in juvenile detention before moving to a high-security adult prison. Bakhtiar received 13 years and was ordered to be deported after serving his sentence. The case made headlines across Europe and sparked critical questions about how a 15-year-old girl could become radicalized in a quiet Scandinavian town. Experts pointing to a combination of factors: a broken family, emotional instability, online grooming, and the seductive simplicity of extremist narratives that offered a sense of purpose to a lost teenager. What made this case even more chilling was Lisa's preparation. She didn't just act impulsively. She studied how to kill. She consumed violent propaganda and let it shape her worldview. After the murder, she recounted watching the same videos that had inspired her to kill. Since then, Lisa has faded from the public eye, but her story remains a stark reminder. Radicalization doesn't require a battlefield, just access to the internet, a vulnerable mind, and an audience willing to share dangerous ideologies. In today's interconnected world, the threats that once seemed distant are now just one click away.
Case 3. Anissa Y. and Morgan Geyser. On May 31st, 2014, in the quiet town of Waukesha, Wisconsin, a seemingly innocent sleepover between three 12-year-old girls turned into a nightmare. Anissa Y. and Morgan Geyser, close friends of Peyton Leutner, had known each other for years. But beneath the surface of their friendship was a deadly plan that would shock the community and captivate the nation. After spending the night playing games and watching movies, the girls decided to go for a walk in the nearby woods. What seemed like a harmless childhood adventure quickly took a darker turn. In a secluded spot, Anissa and Morgan turned on Peyton. Morgan pulled out a knife and began stabbing Peyton, while Anya encouraged the attack. Peyton was stabbed 19 times, with wounds narrowly missing major arteries and one even grazing her heart. The motive behind this brutal attack was chilling. The girls believed they were trying to please Slender Man, a fictional internet character created in 2009 for a scary story contest on the website Something Awful. Slender Man, a faceless, elongated figure in a black suit, quickly became part of internet folklore, often depicted as stalking or abducting children. To Anissa and Morgan, Slender Man wasn't just a story. They believed he was real. They thought by killing someone, they could prove their loyalty to him and become his proxies, even fantasizing about living with him in a mansion deep in the forest. After the attack, Anissa and Morgan left Peyton bleeding in the woods. Miraculously, despite her severe injuries, Peyton managed to crawl to a nearby path where a passing bicyclist spotted her and called for help. Peyton survived the attack, but the psychological trauma would stay with her for life. Police apprehended the girls a few hours later, wandering near the interstate. During their interviews, both girls exhibited an eerie calmness, particularly Morgan, who admitted that she had been thinking about killing for some time. As more details emerged, the case took a darker turn. Morgan was diagnosed with early-onset schizophrenia, a rare but serious mental illness, which doctors believe played a role in her delusions. The legal system was faced with the difficult question of how do you prosecute two 12-year-old girls for attempted murder inspired by a meme? After intense legal battles, both girls were charged as adults. In 2017, Anya Moy pled guilty to being a party to attempted second-degree homicide and was sentenced to 25 years in a mental health facility. Morgan Geyser, who pled guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide, was sentenced to 40 years in a mental health institution. The case raised serious questions about the influence of internet culture on young minds, the complexities of childhood mental illness, and how the justice system should respond to young offenders who commit violent acts. This tragedy highlighted how deeply internet subcultures and mental health issues can affect vulnerable minds, especially children struggling to differentiate between fantasy and reality. Today, Peyton Leutner continues to recover, her strength and survival a testament to her resilience. Anissa and Morgan, meanwhile, live in institutional settings, forever marked by their belief in a fictional monster that led them down a dark, violent path. This case remains a haunting reminder of how the lines between fantasy and reality can blur, sometimes with tragic consequences.
Case 4. Aaron Caffey. In the early hours of March 1, 2008, the small town of Alba, Texas, was shaken by a brutal crime that exposed the darkest depths of teenage rebellion, forbidden love, and the length one girl would go for the boy she believed she couldn't live without. 16-year-old Aaron Caffey lived with her parents, Terry and Penny Caffey, and her two younger brothers, Matthew, 13, and Tyler, 8. The Caffey family appeared to live a quiet, devout Christian life and were well respected in their community. Aaron, the eldest, was bright, talented, and considered the model daughter. But behind the closed doors of the family home, Erin was growing increasingly rebellious, especially after she began dating 19-year-old Charlie Wilkinson. Erin's parents disapproved of the relationship, viewing Charlie as a bad influence. They tried grounding Erin, taking away her phone, and doing everything they could to sever communication between the two. But Erin was obsessed with Charlie, seeing him not just as a boyfriend, but as a savior from what she viewed as an oppressive home life. The more her parents tried to intervene, the deeper Erin fell into the relationship. Then, in the dead of night, a horrific plan came to fruition. Charlie, along with his friend Charles Wade, arrived at the Cathy home armed with guns and a sword. Erin stayed in the getaway car as the two young men entered the house and unleashed violence. Penny Cathy was shot and stabbed to death, and her two younger sons, Matthew and Tyler, were brutally murdered in their beds. The attackers then set the house on fire, intending to destroy all evidence. However, they did not anticipate Terry Cathy. Shot 5 times and left for dead, Terry somehow survived. Bleeding and in shock, he crawled out of the burning house and stumbled through the woods to a neighbor's home where he raised the alarm. As investigators examined the remains of the home, they quickly uncovered a chilling truth. Evidence, including phone records, text messages, and confessions, revealed that Erin had not just known about the murders, she had planned them. Her motive? She believes that killing her family was the only way to be with Charlie forever. It was a twisted version of a Romeo and Juliet fantasy, a dream that ended in real blood. When Terry learned that his own daughter had orchestrated the massacre, he was devastated. In interviews, his heartbreak was evident, yet he chose to forgive Erin. His faith compelled him to show mercy, even in the face of such unimaginable loss. Erin was charged with 3 counts of capital murder, pleaded guilty, and sentenced to 2 life terms plus 25 years. Charlie Wilkinson and Charles Wade both received life sentences without the possibility of parole. The case shocked the nation, leaving everyone to wonder, how could a teenager become so consumed by love that she would destroy everything and everyone she had ever known? Was it manipulation, naivete, or something far darker? Even years later, the Erin Cathy case remains one of the most haunting examples of teenage obsession gone horribly wrong. It's a story of love turned lethal, of innocence consumed by darkness, and a chilling reminder that beneath even the most picturesque homes, unimaginable horrors can sometimes lurk.
Case 5. Ashley Martinson. In the quiet town of Pyle, Wisconsin, 17-year-old Ashley Martinson's life took a tragic and horrifying turn on March 7, 2015. The day after her 17th birthday, Ashley killed her stepfather, Thomas Ayers, and then stabbed her mother, Jennifer Ayers, over 30 times. This brutal act was a result of years of abuse, neglect, and a life filled with trauma. Ashley's family appeared to be a typical household, but beneath the surface, her stepfather was a convicted felon known for violent and controlling behavior. He would monitor Ashley's movements, follow her to school, and even restrict her access to basic necessities, including food and phone privileges. Ashley's mother, Jennifer, either could not or would not protect her from this abuse. In an attempt to escape, Ashley turned to writing horror stories online under the pen name Vampchick. Her stories, filled with violence and revenge, reflected her inner turmoil. When Ashley began a relationship with a 22-year-old man, her parents intervened, taking away her car and phone. Tensions escalated, and on the morning of the murders, Ashley witnessed her stepfather physically assaulting her mother. Feeling trapped and desperate, Ashley grabbed a shotgun from her stepfather's collection and shot him in the neck and head. When her mother came to check on the situation, Ashley stabbed her repeatedly until she was dead. After the murders, Ashley fled with her boyfriend. They were later apprehended in Indiana after a nationwide manhunt. Ashley confessed to the crime, claiming it was an act of survival rather than murder. The state, however, charged her with 2 counts of second-degree intentional homicide. Ashley pled guilty and was sentenced to 23 years in prison. Her case has raised important questions about the impact of abuse, mental health, and the legal system's response to minors who commit violent acts. Ashley's story is a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of living in an abusive environment and the severe toll it can take on a young person's mental health. Today, Ashley is incarcerated at the Tachita Correctional Institution in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Her case remains a poignant example of how unchecked trauma and the failure to protect vulnerable individuals can lead to unimaginable outcomes.